Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel Hare back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Before we get into this episode, a quick note that in your feed right now is our latest Movie Verdicts episode, breaking down Legally Blonde, with myself, Robert Callahan, and my wife, Adrienne Hare, making a special guest appearance, her first time on the show. Excited about that. We talk about law school admissions videos, the Luke Wilson cross-examination, the bend and snap, and so much more. So don't miss it. It's in your feed right now. Okay, on today's show, we head west to Midland, where our guest, Derek Cook, is a shareholder at Lynch, Chappel and Alsup. Derek's practices focuses on oil and gas litigation. He's also past president of the Midland County Bar Association. Now, we recorded this interview in mid-March, just as COVID-19 was starting to get real, so keep that in mind for the context. All right, with that, let's get into our conversation with Midland oil and gas litigator Derek Cook on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Derek Cook joins us here today. Derek, thanks so much for taking time to be with us.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you. Thank you for having me today, Daniel.
Absolutely. Well, and we're obviously talking in unusual circumstances today. We were just before we came on talking about how you were in quarantine mode and or social distancing mode out of the guest house, and we're doing a lot of the same here. Let's talk about that for a moment. And what are you seeing in terms of your practice, your clients? Is it working from home but otherwise business as usual, or are things getting interrupted significantly? What are you seeing?
Personally, for me, my firm, our policy right now is that if you're in one of the high-risk demographics, older, immunodeficient, something like that, work from home. Other than that, it's kind of there's not really a firm policy about what to do if you don't fit in one of those groups, and so it's kind of person to person. My wife is pregnant right now. We've got a 1-year-old, and so I've kind of been coming in for a couple hours in the morning just to check my mail, touch base with some people at the office, and then coming back, like I told you before, we have a guest house here, and so I've kind of used that as a makeshift office. I've got remote access set up to my desktop at the office, and so I can basically do everything from here that I could do if I was at the office. But it's definitely different. The world's changed a whole lot in just a few days.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to watch it unfold on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you're obviously out in Midland and in West Texas. What is the word from the courts and the jurisdiction out there? I know the Supreme Court has recently made some overarching orders, but what do you hear from the court staff, the courts, and those around the just the bar and the legal community there in Midland?
So one of my partners had a jury trial set to start on Monday of this week in Howard County, which is Big Spring, which is about 45 minutes east of here.
Yep.
It got canceled. I was supposed to have a jury trial April 6th in Sanderson, which is about 2.5-3 hours southwest of Midland, and it got canceled. The courts in Midland have kind of gone to the non-essential, have kind of stood in line with the Texas Supreme Court order and ordered that all non-essential hearings are off. Essential hearings being, I think, the magistrate hearings for criminal matters, family violence hearings, temporary injunctions, really extraordinary stuff is all that's really going on out here right now from the courts. The bar association in Midland has canceled a couple of events that were supposed to take place in the last couple of weeks, and so events and going out in public that has definitely slowed down. I can tell my email traffic has slowed down. Phone traffic has slowed down. With oil being, I think now today somewhere in the $25 a barrel range. That is going to really impact our clients, our firm, our practice.
Sure.
So we're still trying to figure out what the ramifications are going to be from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there, or do you have on the calendar things like depositions and other pretrial things that are not necessarily in the courthouse, but things that maybe could be done remotely that are sticking, or are all those getting postponed and delayed as well?
So for me, I haven't really had anything like that, but a couple of my colleagues I know have canceled depositions. Although I went up there today this morning and there was a mediation going on.
Oh, okay.
And so I think it's just kind of for stuff like that, mediations, depositions, meetings, it's kind of person by person, case by case. What are the clients open to? What is attorney handling it open to do? So like I said before, our firm is just kind of a case by case, person by person deal. And there's not really much more than that we're doing right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I want to transition from there and just ask you a little bit more about your practice and what you all do, and get some thoughts for young lawyers in the audience to learn from you. But first off, we kind of talked a little bit about Midland and West Texas, but I'd like for you to share a little more for those that aren't familiar with the practice out there, just what it's like to be a lawyer there, and what are some of the things that you enjoy about that are maybe unique to it versus other places, and just start there.
Yeah, so ending up in Midland definitely wasn't the plan. I grew up in Wichita Falls, went to law school at Baylor, went to undergrad in DFW, thought I was going to get a job in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But I graduated in 2011, kind of in the height. I think there's an Above the Law article that talks about how the class of 2011, which started in the financial crisis of '08 hit, how the lowest percentage of people from that class were able to get jobs that required a JD. So It was kind of, at the time, I graduated in law review, pretty good grades. In most other years, I think I probably would have ended up with a job after my second year, but it just didn't turn out that way. And so I'd taken the bar, and I was going around all over the state, Tyler, Amarillo, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, just trying to get a job. And my goal was, if I could just get in somewhere, get some experience. If I wasn't happy there, I could use that experience to transition to another firm and just kind of work my way to where I wanted to be eventually. And just happened to, through the Baylor Career Services, send an email saying, hey, there's this great firm in Midland. They're looking for a litigation associate, which is what I was interested in. Going to Baylor, doing practice court and all that. And so just, it was the first place I got a good firm, 20 or so lawyers, really liked the people. Wife, I don't know how hot she was on it because she grew up in Fort Worth. And so took a little convincing, but at the time, we both wanted to kind of move on to the next step in life, and it was just kind of where we ended up. As far as my practice out here, like I said, I do litigation, and everything I do, for the most part, everything I do, every case or every matter, directly or indirectly, touches the oil and gas industry.
Sure.
I do a lot of collection work related to the oil and gas industry. We represent a lot of operators in royalty payment disputes, other lease disputes. Represent a lot of service companies, and then individuals that are tied to the industry somehow. And so, like I was talking about earlier, when the oil and gas industry, our firm kind of rides with that. So how that goes, our firm goes.
Yeah.
In terms of the practice itself out here, it's great. I think because we're a smaller legal community, there's more camaraderie between opposing counsel that are local out here.
Yeah.
Because there's not real. I mean, if you do something that somebody's going to remember what you do. I mean, they're going to remember how you treat them, how you act, what you did, and so because of that, I think everyone is always on their best behavior with courts, with opposing counsel. Extensions are freely given. There's not a lot of posturing on the phone.
Yeah.
I just like how everyone's pretty straight with each other and to the point. I really like the bar out here, and we've got good judges.
Yeah.
So it's just a great place to work, and it's not something I think when you're in law school. I don't think it's at the top of anybody's list, but for me, it's been a great place to work.
Absolutely, and as you know, I've been out there a number of times, and we've sent a lot of folks out there, and it is a really solid and enjoyable, I think, legal environment. The other thing I wanted to ask you about with it, because I know sometimes for people that aren't familiar with the area and maybe have spent most of their life, in one of the other major cities around Texas, is just even the difference between Midland maybe and the other what would be considered West Texas cities, whether that's you mentioned Wichita Falls up to Amarillo and over Lubbock and then down to Midland, but then out to Odessa. How would you, and sometimes those all just kind of sort of get put in the same bucket, right, of West Texas. But how would you distinguish or speak to what it's like in Midland specifically, or something that's unique about living or practicing in Midland versus some of the other communities in West Texas?
The thing that jumps out the most at me is just the sophistication of our practice versus what you would probably imagine a lawyer like in Wichita Falls would do. Like, I grew up in Wichita Falls, and there's a few solos up there, maybe a couple firms that have 2 to 5 attorneys.
Yeah.
But they're very general practice.
Right.
Family, criminal, probate, the whole gambit is what they're kind of doing up there. But here in Midland, every attorney or for the most part, most attorneys at the bigger firms are pretty specialized. We have a group of lawyers that just do litigation, a group that just does probate and estate planning, a group that does title work, and a group that does corporate transactional work. And those are pretty firm barriers between each practice group, although there's some synergy where stuff will spin off from one section to the other.
Sure.
So the sophistication, the number of lawyers, our firm has 25-ish right now lawyers. The firm across the street, Cotton Bledsoe, has about 40.
Yep.
There are a couple other firms in town that have between David Sherrill and Kramer, the Stubman firm. Kelly Hart has an office out here, Brockett and McNeil. So, and those firms have anywhere from 10 to 20 lawyers too. And so just a much bigger pool of attorneys out here than you would expect just based on population size. And that's all based on the oil and gas industry and the demands that it puts on the community to have enough attorneys to be able to service the operators, service companies, and all the different persons and companies that are directly or indirectly tied to the industry.
Yeah, that's great. Well, what are some things that you think are important for young associates to know as they're, in their initial years in their career in the practice of law, to just set themselves up for having success? What are some things either that you learned as a young lawyer or that you've seen now kind of as you've been progressing through that are important for young lawyers to pay attention to and to stay on top of as they get into their careers?
Well, for me, and I've talked about this pretty openly at some bar meetings here locally, kind of looking back at my practice early on at where I'm at now, I just wasn't taking care of myself from a self-care standpoint like I should have been. And I wasn't open with people that I worked with about, kind of what was going on. So I'm a recovering alcoholic. and I've been pretty open about that. And I think the work that TLAB and bar, state bar, and some other organizations locally here in Midland are doing to kind of bring attention to, especially young lawyers,
Yeah.
about the problems that are inherent in the profession,
Yeah.
with problem drinking, depression, anxiety, those types of things. I think there have been some studies that have came out recently that anywhere from 25% to 33% of lawyers kind of in their late 20s are prone to problem drinking because of the stresses and anxieties, everything you deal with in the practice of law, everything you deal with in law school itself, class rankings, trying to get on law review,
Yeah.
always comparing yourself to somebody else. I think all of that, more so than the average profession, causes kind of a perfect storm of circumstance that can lead someone kind of down that path more so than your average person. So,
Yeah.
I, at the time, my first couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years of practice, was not taking care of myself like I should have been, was overworking and not telling the people above me, my superiors, that I felt like I was being overworked to some extent, that I was putting way too much of myself and taking all that on, and kind of turning to drinking to kind of deal with it. And so, looking back now, I wish I had. In some ways, I think it's good because I think I needed to go through that to end up where I am now. But at the same time, I think that if we're open and honest and we talk about those kind of issues to younger lawyers who may be listening to this, that maybe we can head some of that off before it escalates to a point where there's severe ramifications in terms of license being in jeopardy or other things that we definitely, the profession doesn't want to happen.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that, not just here, but in the other forums that you have, and for being open about that, and for wanting to help others as they are facing those types of scenarios and struggles. I completely agree, and it's something that just in those last couple of years that I was at the law school, it certainly was being ramped up in terms of just awareness for the students that they were about to enter a profession where they would be vulnerable to whether it be alcohol, drugs, or other things to cope with what they were going to go through in their careers. And so, but it does feel like it's still in the really early stages of getting that ramped up across the legal practice community and industry. So thanks for that. From a practice side of things, when you look at young associates and watch their work product and just the way they go about their work, what are one or two things that you've observed, or maybe you could share in terms of those that are maybe doing it right, setting themselves up well, versus those that are struggling?
Yeah, so our firm, like I talked about earlier, we're very specialized, and some of the partners I work with refer to our associate training model as modified sink or swim.
Yeah.
And I would say it's probably closer towards sink or swim as somebody who's more close. I'm closer to being an associate than I am being a partner at my firm, and so kind of coming off that experience, you're kind of thrown into the fire, I think, from day one. When I walked in my first day, I had a stack of 3 files on my desk, and it was just like, go do this.
Right.
And so we try to hire people that for each specific section, we'll try to hire people, I think, that have a propensity or have something on their resume that ties to that specific section. For litigation, we've hired 3 or 4 Baylor lawyers just because of the practice court program and the emphasis that it puts on litigation. And we think people that come out of that program and go into litigation are going to be ahead of the curve, especially in their first couple of years compared to the average person coming out of law school. And so what we kind of look for from an associate is somebody who can step in and give it good effort and hopefully get there on their own, with being able to talk to clients on their own, figure out which form they need to be working from, figure out what the issues are kind of on their own. But, at the same time, if somebody has made a good effort, given it the old college try, and they still need some more guidance, me and other attorneys are more than willing to kind of step in and help them to the extent we can.
Yeah.
I just think everyone having fewer attorneys and having the workload that we have right now, I don't know what that workload is going to be like
Right.
in the next month or so, but everyone's really busy, and so it's kind of like you need to. The sooner you can get it on your own, the sooner you can demonstrate to your managing partner, the partner you're working with, that you're able to handle tasks on your own with little to no guidance. I think that's in our market. That's kind of what we're looking for our firm.
Yeah, yeah. When your firm is going through the process of hiring, whether it's out of law school or a lot of our listeners are out in maybe their first few years of practice, so maybe from a lateral standpoint as well, how do you go about trying to identify those types of candidates who have that ability, or at least even if they haven't done it before, maybe have the propensity to take things from the early stage in that sink or swim environment? How do you go about that in kind of the interview stages or the screening stages to look for those right types of people?
I think it's asking questions about their interests, of what they've done in law school from a practical perspective, to prepare themselves for practice. And so, with somebody that comes from Baylor, like I talked about, they're going to go through practice court. They're going to have the tie to litigation where they're going to be prepared when they come out. For other practice areas, I would ask and look at transcripts and ask questions about, well, did you take a drafting course if you want to do corporate work, or did you maybe participate in a wills or probate clinic if you want to do have an estate planning or probate type position. And so I think if they have demonstrated that they've done some practical work in their second or third year of law school that gears them towards being more prepared than your average law students, that's something that's a benefit for us. Overall, in general, when we're looking at resumes, class rank, law review, that kind of stuff, maybe move your resume to kind of a preferred position, but we're really big on fit. And
Sure.
So the interview is going to play way more of a role in our decision than just the resume.
Yeah.
So, and also somewhere in the interview process or somewhere on the resume, I think a tie to the West Texas area is going to be very important for us, because we've had a lot of associates come in for a year or two. And some in the interviews, I remember one interview we had where a guy just came out and said, yeah, I want to do oil and gas title work at your firm for a year, and then I'm going to go try to get an in-house job somewhere. And we're like, oh, okay. Well, then you're probably not going to work here, but that's cool.
Well, that's honest, I guess.
Yeah, at least it was honest.
Right. There have probably been several more that have come through there that have thought that exact thing and just not said it.
Yeah. And so I think he's in Houston now. So
Right.
So yeah, if there's a tie to West Texas, either family or maybe they worked out here as a landman for a while. We've had some people like that have come through the firm. So we want people that want to be at our firm for the long term. We don't like turning associates over and over. We prefer continuity and building a practice with people we want to practice with.
Yeah. That raises a question that I get asked about sometimes, especially among young lawyers, when they ask about, it can be asked in a few different ways in an interview, but basically the interview question is something along the lines of, where do you see yourself in X number of years? And maybe trying to get at that, where the, midterm, long range type goals And for a young lawyer who's maybe just been out a couple years and hasn't quite got it all figured out yet, that question, I know it can be intimidating for them. For a firm like yours, where you are looking for that long-term fit, what's, kind of a reasonable answer to that question that doesn't just get you eliminated if you can't just come out and say, I want to be here for the long term, but you're really open to it, but you just, you just haven't, you're just still young. You haven't done that much yet,
Yeah, I definitely don't think we're asking somebody to, commit for 30, 40 years, although there are a number of attorneys in my firm that have been there that long.
Right. Yeah.
We kind of show those people off as, hey, you could be here this long if you want to be here. But if somebody's asked that question, I think if they have a strong interest in oil and gas and wanting to engage in complex, either transactional or litigation work related to that, you're going to get that opportunity at our firm quicker in your practice from when you start at our firm than you would at a firm in Dallas or Houston, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think in the interview process, if we see people who want to get that kind of experience as quickly as possible and show kind of a go-getter attitude, that's something we're looking for, and that would generally, I think, be the type of person that that sticks around longer, just based on people that are shareholder now versus some associates who have come and gone within a 1 or 2 year period of time.
Right.
So, and having it doesn't have to be a direct connection to the area, but if there's some kind of family connection, or they grew up like I did in Wichita Falls, or a similar size population city, just kind of gauging what their goals are. Is your goal to be, is it being at a very prestigious firm in a big city, or is it more, do they seem like somebody who would identify more with kind of a smaller town feel, but also, like I said earlier, having that interest in a more complex practice area?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think this question I'm about to ask is especially timely and relevant given what we're witnessing right now. And I'll ask it in a little different way than I normally do, but the work-life balance issue, particularly among lawyers and young lawyers and law firms, and how they navigate that, has been a topic of discussion for the last couple of years, especially. And we're seeing, I think, one piece of that play out in the sense of flexible work arrangements and working from home and remote working and all of that, just even in the last few days, whether it's being mandated or strongly encouraged. How do you kind of see those things working together and as we move forward in terms of in the law practice industry with young lawyers and kind of work-life balance, where they work from and when they work? What are you seeing out in Midland in terms of that?
So right now, there's more attorneys, just as we see it here today, working at home in my firm than probably there have since I've been there.
Right.
We had an associate in the last couple of years who he got he was really interested in working from home. He had a young child. He got the firm management to, I think, help purchase a desk so he could work from home. We have given everybody laptops in the last couple of years that are set up with remote access to your computer at work, and our shared drives. You can access all the forms and things you need to work from home. So we're moving in that direction. But I think with some of, like I talked about, we've had attorneys, given the way the oil and gas economy, their industry has kind of played out. In Midland, there are a lot of attorneys in their 60s and 70s who came out in the 80s when there was a big boom then.
Right.
And then there's a lot of younger attorneys who have come out in the boom that has happened in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And so there's a big gap between the older attorneys and the younger attorneys, and then there's not a whole lot of attorneys like in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And so I think with all the older attorneys being the ones who are the majority of shareholders at my firm, I think that some of them, just didn't grow up, didn't come up in the practice with working from home, working remotely, being a thing.
No.
So, they're really big. Some of them are really big on, FaceTime, seeing somebody in the office every day. But I think in the last couple of years, I talked about the associate who worked from home a lot. We've seen more policies at our firm change to promote that. And I think that's, an important thing because, it helps you if you're working from home and you can manage it. I don't think there's a lot other than face-to-face meetings. If you're in the corporate or estate planning section, I know those are really big things that you would need, and even in litigation too. But then with litigation, depositions and court appearances, like those types of things, you're going to have to be at the office or you're going to have to be out and about. But 80-90% of what we do on a day-to-day basis, I think, can be done from home. And so I hope that from this experience, one of the things that comes out of it is some of the older attorneys at my firm, other firms, will see that, when we're at home, younger attorneys are being productive. It helps us. We can still be productive, but then we can also do the things at home that we need to do to take some of that other stress off that we have in other areas of our life.
Right.
Just have an overall better well-being and ultimately be better lawyers because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Well, Derek, I know this is a crazy time, and I appreciate you sharing some of yours with us today. We've got a few rapid-fire questions to end our time. If you're ready, we will launch into those.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. All right, first one. Name one trait or characteristic you most want to see in an associate.
I would say the most, kind of like I talked about earlier, the trait that we're looking for most is somebody that's a go-getter.
Yeah.
That from the outset they're gonna jump into it and dive in and be somebody that can swim and not sink.
Right. What habit has been key to your success?
I think being responsive. I deal with a lot of attorneys who just, you can go 2-3 days without a response to an email or a phone call.
Yeah.
And I've had it drilled into me from an early age from early in my practice, from my mentor attorney to, return calls within 24 hours, return emails within 24 hours. There's definitely a balance with that, with not wanting to be too responsive to where it's kind of dominating your life and you're tied to your phone all the time. But I think clients appreciate that, and I've gotten a lot of return business, I think, because of just being responsive.
Sure. No, absolutely. Your favorite app or productivity tool?
So right now, my favorite app or productivity tool is Google's Chrome remote desktop app.
Yeah.
Because it's letting me kind of access all these forms. And I've only used it for the first time in the last couple of days, and it was easy to install, and it's just like you're on your computer in real time. So it's been great. Nice.
Good one. Your favorite new or rehashed activity during social distancing 2020? That's a new question for this segment.
Yeah. I don't really. It's kind of been rapid fire in terms of everything happening.
Yeah.
All at once. The toilet paper thing is what gets to me. I just
right.
I don't get it. So I guess hoarding toilet paper. Although we're not doing that here. I checked our stash earlier. We have 10 rolls, and so hopefully we're good until the supply chain can catch back up.
Right. Last one. Favorite legal movie?
So I guess I saw this and I kind of had two thoughts. In terms of overall movie, I think my favorite is the Verdict with Paul Newman.
Yes.
I think his closing argument in that, I think, is just amazing. But in terms of just one scene, and I think this is from one of my favorite movies, is the courtroom scene from Idiocracy. I think is just a great encapsulation of hopefully not where we're headed in terms of for the legal practice, but just that movie Idiocracy and how that scene where the normal guy's defense lawyer kind of turns on him and acts as the prosecutor for a little bit while they're arguing about whether he should go to jail or not. I think is pretty funny. So
that's awesome.
That's kind of where I come down on that.
Well, cool. Well, yeah, the verdict is on our list for sure to get into on our movie verdicts episodes and our deep dives. In fact, another Ike Van Den Eyck in Dallas from Coons Fuller, that was his choice as well. So good company for you and for him. So I'm excited to get to that one, and I haven't seen it yet. Crazy. So I'm looking forward to looking at it and then reviewing it. So thanks for that, and thanks again for taking the time to be on the show. We really appreciate it, and wish you all the best as we navigate this crazy season, and then after that, of course, down in the future. So
yeah, be safe and hold on to all your toilet paper.
For real. All right, my thanks again to Derek Cook for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do a couple of things for me? Number one, would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then secondly, please tell your friends and colleagues in the Texas legal community about the show so we can serve as many of you as possible. If you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please email me directly, daniel@varsitysearch.com. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.